Welcome, everybody. It's good to be here. I had never been that international, so I'm really, really happy to be here, and I'm sure that we're going to have a great time, great experience. Um, well, first, I would like to say just a few things. So, besides thanking everybody for being here, I also want to thank VenTESOL for the invitation. And I want to make a disclaimer right away, and that is, um, well, I'm coming here to you not exactly as an expert, but more like a fellow teacher who would like to share some thoughts with you from my experience. I've been teaching, I lost my count. I started teaching very young. I'm 41 right now, but I've been teaching for at least 20 years. So, my experience teaching English is based a number of years in Venezuela. I taught some in Colombia as well, and just a short time in the United States. And now I've been in Santiago, Chile, in South America for the last 4 years. Okay, so that's me. I would also like to tell you a little bit about the origin of my presentation. So when I got the invitation to participate in VenTESOL, I was thinking, okay, what do I really want to share? What's really important and relevant from many years of experience to transmit? And I said, okay, I can put it in three key principles. And the first one being the interaction, which I consider really important. And I truly believe that you learn a language by connecting with another person, communicating. Okay, so interaction connects also with the aspect of developing linguistic competence, right? And of course, social skills. Now, when I thought about the second aspect, I said, well, what's the second one? And I thought about integration, which is basically the lesson that I've learned here in Chile, the way they work. And that has to do with making sense of what you learn and how do you combine new information, how you put everything together, and that's going to contact with the development of the cognitive aspects of learners. And then, of course, last but not least, is going to be the inspiration. And you it really need to connect with the students at an emotional level. I know for some teachers, especially but if you don't get to tap into the emotions of your students in order to use them in a positive way, then to keep in mind, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. Okay. Okay. So now the other thing I want to do is, so we have three eyes, right? So we go over the first eye, and then that's when you ask questions. That's gonna be probably a short discussion. I was thinking first of doing 10 minutes. You ask for 10 minutes, then I do another eye, and then you ask, and then the third eye. But I thought it would be a little better and perhaps more dynamic if we just have this in terms of a conversation. Okay, so if you don't ask questions, I will ask you questions. Okay, so I hope everything goes well in this regard. Okay, good. So now let me see the first. I should be sharing this one. Okay, so let me start from zero. And then we have the three I's worth keeping in mind: interaction, integration, and inspiration. And I'm feeling very inspired today. So, just what I was saying, general overview, what we have today is the three I's. So I'm just going to divide them in exactly that. I. And I'm talking about I. Talking about integration, interaction, integration, and inspiration. And for each of them, what I would like to cover or to go over is going to be the what. So what's interaction? What's integration? What's inspiration? What's in my conception of these words? Um, I do not want to look at it from a very theoretical aspect, even though I will sprinkle a few words from some authors, but more importantly, my perception of the words. Then I would like to look at the why. Why do we have to interact? Why do we need to integrate? And why do we need to inspire or more importantly, get the students inspired. So, and then how do we do it? I cannot give you a thorough recipe on how to do these things, but I'm definitely planning on showing you a couple of examples of how I've done it and it's worked for me. Okay. I'm going to ask Jesus and Miguel to keep an eye on the chat and feel free to interrupt me anytime if you need to say something because it's really hard for me to look at the chat while I'm sharing the screen. Okay. So
Super, no problem, Friday. We'll let you know.
good. Wonderful. Okay. Okay. So let's continue. Now, what's interaction? So I thought, well, first I would like to share what the Oxford Learner's Dictionary has to say. And I found two interesting definitions that actually both of them combined to convey what I really think of interaction in our teaching context. So look at that one. So interaction, the act of communicating with somebody, especially while you work, play, or spend time with them. Okay, so I'm going to take from that concept, I'm just going to point out the word communication. So we need to interact if you want to communicate. Okay, now look at this second concept. Interaction. If one thing has interaction with another, or if there is an interaction between two things, the two things have an effect on each other. Well, we're talking about things here, not people. But look at the example, the interaction of bacteria with the body's natural chemistry. I like this concept. Don't get me wrong, I'm not calling our students bacteria, but I like this aspect specifically because of the phrase have an effect. And when you communicate, it's not just bursting out words or just listening, but whatever you say beyond the words has an impact. And that impact can go in so many ways. And ideally, if we are aware of this, then that's how we make our communication positive and effective. Okay, so the communication part, key aspect, but also keeping in mind the effect. So if we can be aware of promoting interaction based on those two elements, we're doing great to begin with. Okay, so those are two. Um, yeah, I just can't help looking at the chat whenever I can. Right. So the second thing I would like to show you about interaction is drawn from SLA, meaning second language acquisition. Now, let me read and then comment on this. So Kun Yi and others claim that at its core, the interaction hypothesis still proposes that second language acquisition is facilitated by understandable input and informational exchanges through interpersonal interactions between speakers. Interactions are, of course, still ascribed a major role the second language process. Besides being a significant source of language data, it is also through the active participation in interactions that much of the learning occurs. So, first, I want you to notice that the interaction, we know the value, and I'm pretty sure that most of you recognize the value of interaction in learning. But now I'm here to tell you that it's part of the theory that works as a foundation for learning. So looking now that you know that there is actually an interaction hypothesis, which was created somewhere around 1981 to 1993 by Michael Long. It was afterwards reviewed by Ellis, but still the core, as we see in here, is that we need understandable input. Okay, we need exchanges. It has to be interpersonal, so you're interacting with somebody. Indefinitely, this author is going to certify or claim that much of the learning occurs in the interactions. And the reason is because during the interaction, there is negotiation of meaning. Now, I have to clarify something as well that in second language acquisition field, this interaction hypothesis was a little bit criticized in a way because they would say they were thinking of a second language context. All right, English as a second language, and they were thinking originally of non-native speakers interacting with native speakers. So there was a lot of chances of misunderstanding, confusions, frustration from the one that was learning English because the level of English was way more advanced for native speaker, obviously. Now, but if we, and that makes sense. It can be very frustrating if you're learning English and then you go straight to talk to a native speaker and he starts talking like crazy and you don't understand a thing. Yes, frustration for sure. However, in the EFL context, and that's what I like this hypothesis, we are dealing with, well, we're working with students that have, you would say, certain um, amount of knowledge. They are leveled. And that works better if you remember Krashen's hypothesis, the I+1. It means that according to that hypothesis, students learn from another person that is just above the level of that student. And that explains why sometimes, many times, students interact better in English with other students than what they do with us, teachers, right? So if that's the case, interaction plays a great role in our EFL setting because you're going to have interaction with students that are going to negotiate the meaning with somebody that is about their same level. In the affective filter, it's lower, means they don't feel so intimidating by interacting. So interaction is a really good thing if you can keep it in mind, promote interaction. And the more you promote interaction, the less teacher-centered you're going to be. So it's about providing students with opportunities, create instances in which students can do the work, just give them instructions, guide them, and let them do it. Okay? Of course, you definitely need to monitor every activity you create for sure. Do you all, does anybody have any question or comments so far? It doesn't have to be just questions. You can make comments if you like. Okay? Keep that in mind. Okay, let's continue. Now, you now that you're not asking me, I'm going to ask myself. How about that? When can we have interaction? I mean, when's the best time to promote interaction during a class, for example? And I'm going to say at any time. It can happen at the beginning of the class, in the middle, or at the end. If you want to look at it in traditional vocabulary, you would say the pre, the while, and the post of the class. You can have interaction just about in any time of the class. The real important thing is that you keep the focus of what you want from the interaction. Obviously, you're not going to promote interaction at the beginning to try to get results of something that you have not actually worked out during the lesson. But you can still have other kinds of interaction. And you might ask as well, okay, so I can do it anytime during the class. How do I do it? What's the best way to go? Obviously, when we're discussing interaction, you definitely need more than one person. So should I do it in pairs, in groups of 3, 4, 5? Well, everything is possible. From my personal experience, I'm going to say the most effective ones are pairs and groups of 3. Anytime that goes beyond that, we all know uh, as teachers and former students, that there is somebody that is going to be left behind and is going to find the gap not to talk. So, two or three, it's a great idea, and it can happen in any time of the class. Now, as you can see, I'm referring about the interaction mostly among students. Okay, we have another kind of interaction if you would like to look at it. That is the teacher-student interaction. But I want to focus more on the students because of what I just mentioned before, that they are about the same level, lower filter, effective filter, and they can negotiate meaning better. Okay. I will still address a little bit of teacher-student interaction towards the end.
Okay, Freddy, we
Yes,
have a comment and a question and interaction. Would you like to tackle that one now?
absolutely.
Okay, there is a comment that says interaction through parent group work maximizes the opportunities to practice as more learners speak for more of the time. That one comes from Juan Jose.
Hmm.
And there is a question from Rafael Tovar, and he asks, how does the interaction work when we have students with handicaps?
Okay, those are very interesting ones. Regarding one, yes, that's exactly what I was saying. The less you have, the more opportunities or challenges they have to speak, they have to communicate. Now, interaction with handicaps, that is quite a challenge. I'm going to say that it's one of the lacks of education or gaps that education has in general. We don't normally get trained to work with students with certain disabilities. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know if everywhere else in the world, but here in Chile, the what we call the inclusive education is growing. So we're looking at integration of those kind of students, and you definitely need to be prepared to do things that you don't normally do, and have students aware that the other person has different ways to communicate. So best way to go is to make your students aware that you're going to have students with different um, ways to do things, and that's totally acceptable, normal, perfect. So everybody will find a way to interact, and students need to learn that. So at the end of the day, it is the students that have to adapt to other students, and they have to figure it out. And that actually plays well with the concept of negotiation of meaning, right? So that's one thing. But it's a challenge. It's not an easy thing, I can say. I've had students with visual impairment and some that cannot hear as well, and it's quite a challenge. Okay, so Helen
Ready?
says that includes students with bad behavior.
There you
Eh,
go.
by that, you mean the interaction? I'm not sure that's what Helen was trying to ask. Um, that includes students with bad. Would that be interaction includes students with bad behavior? And I'm going to say absolutely. I mean, students with bad behavior. That's like a different thing. But who knows? Maybe if you got the interaction well, you can take advantage of that bad behavior and make it work for the best. In fact, you will see, and I'm going to address that later, that one of the things that we need to use or try to include inspiration and integration and the three eyes that I'm working with today is because students need recognition. They always, one way or another, are looking for recognition. And once that, sometimes that bad behaviors that we mentioned, it's just a lack of recognition. And when, if you can direct that to have students um, be recognized, they feel happy, and they can actually twist things to have students that are could, who knows, become your assistants. um, Okay, so I'll continue. All right, very good. Um, Now let me continue over here. Now, this is one example of something that I would do for interaction at the beginning of a class. But I forgot to mention, and I think it's really important to clarify as part of my disclaimer. You probably need to know what kind of students I work with so that you understand why I'm proposing this activity. Now, just keep in mind that every activity can be adapted. Okay, so this is just don't pay too much attention to the depth of the activity, but more like to the procedure or the general idea of what can be done. For example, one idea that we can have at the beginning right away is a little riddle. So I have that riddle about two teachers that you can see there. Two teachers met after a long time. The first teacher asked the second teacher, "How's your son?" The second teacher replied, "My son is 5 times as old as my daughter, and my wife is 5 times as old as my son. I'm twice as old as my wife, whereas my grandmother, who's celebrating her 81st birthday, is as old as all of us put together. So, how old is the second teacher's son?" Um, okay, if we read it slower and if we give them time, they'll try to work it out and figure it out. But it's not just about the process, the mental process of figuring out the numbers, but also sharing with others how you came to the conclusion. Did you use an equation or did you just guess? Did you try different numbers? So talk to other people, talk to, and then kind of show pride that I found the answer first or fast, tell others. So that's one possible activity that's probably, you might say, mm, disconnected from the rest of the content, and that's okay as long as you have students participate and get in a good mood. So that's an idea of something you can do. Okay. Um, Now here's another idea that you could probably think of now that we are in this context of social distance, which is actually limiting all our interaction, our social interaction, and definitely limits students' learning. So we gotta do what we gotta do. It means we have to use technology and try to use what is easier for them to handle and for us too. So uh, I'm going to say, look at this example. So you find a classmate to work with and use your WhatsApp. So I would dare say almost everybody has WhatsApp. Send each other a voice message of yourself. Now, I put in blue what I was doing at the time of teaching this class, in which students had a dossier they read for the week. And I asked them to read part of the text. Okay? They could choose any part of the text. The important thing is that they were for no longer than 2 minutes. I mean, for other circumstances, they can read a different thing and they can do less time. Depends on the context of every learner. But the point is, they will send each other the audio through WhatsApp, which is very simple, something simple to do. You would listen and then you would provide feedback to the other person. Now, how would you do that if we are separate? People don't like writing emails very much, and you like to find a way to keep in one place all the feedback so you can monitor what's happening. This can happen in a synchronous or asynchronous way. Okay. Now, what I did was to create a link in Google Docs and students will go to that link. I would give them a link, and they would just go there and make or provide the feedback. Now I'm going to show you what that Google looked like. Okay. Um, this is what I called it, my speaking listening practice. So I created this in a Google Doc, just chart in there. I wrote speaker, I wrote listener, and I wrote the feedback. Notice how I noticed I wanted to define the feedback just in case. I said words that were probably mispronounced in your opinion, so that they would not get too judgmental. Okay, so they did this, and then I had a list of students with with comments, okay? And just let me clear the drawings because they're driving me crazy. All right, thank you. Um, so what I did as a teacher was they did this outside the classroom. That was like a little homework. And when we came back next class, I said, okay, let me open the document. Let me see who worked. Good job. Very good. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the words for you so that you both, the speaker and the listener, can compare or assess your performance as a speaker or as the person that provides feedback. So I read the words and they were like, oh, I was right. No, I was wrong. Oh, you did good. Oh, no, yes, you. And so they had started interacting about it in a good mood. So that was a good experience. Also, of course, you can use this same interaction activity for multiple purposes. I've used it also for writing exercises. So you can have students share paragraphs and get feedback on grammar, on punctuation, on spelling, okay, for example. Um, and then also you can use it to compare whatever you want to compare or contrast based on different opinions, okay? So that's one possibility. Um,
There was a question that I consider good to be done right now because it goes right
mhm,
away with that activity.
yeah.
It says, do you actually listen to the reading?
To well, it depends on the activity. For this activity in particular, I don't, because this is some space that I give them to interact. So on this part, because it's simple, the kind of feedback they're giving is very, very simple. I'm not paying attention to the listening of everybody. However, I've done this kind of activity with a little more, as actually as part of assessment. So what I do is I ask them to save the listening in a folder that I provide in my drive, and then I go to it. But as a regular teaching activity, short activity for interaction, I would not normally listen to that because I would just read the words and they are expected to reflect on their performance. Hmm. That's what I would do. I have a question for you. So just double checking my internet connection. Uh, can you hear me well, or has it been a little choppy or something while I've been talking? Clear? All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. Um, very, very good. Any questions, comments so far about anything? No? No comments, no questions? If you have any, perhaps, if from my idea, some of your ideas come to mind, you're welcome to share as well, some of them if you want to, okay? So you know. Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, these exercises, before I assign this exercise, I would normally do one for them so that they know what to do. Yes, that's the important thing to mention. Yeah, but I do that for every activity. Otherwise, how and one of the reasons what I would model is to avoid the avalanche of questions afterwards about details of not understanding what to do. So that's that's something I do. Okay, very good. Now let me show you the following. This is another activity for interaction that I like to do. Especially, I like to include that goofy face of Jack Black. Okay, so this is what I would call the expert game. And the expert game in this one, which is I would use it at any time during the class, not just at the beginning, but if I see my students are getting too worn out and they need a little activity to relieve some stress, I would do this activity. And for this one, we volunteer or we get somebody to be the expert. And this person is assigned, or the person can actually decide on a certain topic. It can be related to the content of the class if we want to. either punctuation, verbs, paragraph structure, or the content of the dossier I mentioned before, citizenship, or technology, or any free topic like music or movies. And they are expected to be the experts. Students, the rest of the students ask questions. And he doesn't have to think a lot. Whatever comes to mind, he has to answer. It's supposed to be a fun activity, and they usually love it because they ask all kind of weird questions, and the expert gives all kind of weird answers, and that they laugh and everything. And the important thing is that they are interacting, so they are allowing themselves to move on and experience another element that I would like to call learning community. I always tell my students, we are a learning community. There's no room here for hateful comments or fear of mistakes or anything. So these kind of activities let them connect. Okay. Now, this activity can be done in a more elaborated way as well. This one I do it for fun, but I've used the same activity to raise awareness of what students know or what they don't and what they should be looking at. Look at this other case of this expert. This is more elaborated, and you can do it like a project. So, for example, I will ask my students, and this was a class I was teaching with graduate students at one time, but it can be adapted, like I said. I asked my students to write a bio of themselves, something very short. Look at that. I just said, write a greeting and self-introduction. Write your degree, in this case, where you studied, what's your research interest, what you're researching on, or what you would like to research on. Again, this can be adapted. I don't know. You can ask your students to say, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite place? Where do you like to go on vacation? Anything that relates to your context. Now, what I asked them is to make a short video with a cell phone, answering those questions, and insert that in a PowerPoint presentation. So the point is that they can create something. And you will see, and I'm addressing that later as well, that part of the inspiration is creating and showing and feeling proud of your work. That's how you get to motivate students. So I created one, for example, I usually create one in terms of modeling, and I give it to the students. And I said, here's my bio. I create a video. Well, this is an image right now, but I would normally click on the image and it would be a video. And they do it too. And I create a folder to share with me. I take a look at them, and give them feedback about the writing. They can make it again if they want to. But the point is, what we do is they come to class, they present, they just share the screen in this context. Remember that many of these things I'm addressing are for this context. You can do them in the classroom as well. But for this activity, for example, I prepared it for students in this pandemic context. So students create this, they share it in the classroom, and then I create another Google Doc similar to the one I showed you. Okay, similar to the one I showed you. And everybody, as soon as the person finishes showing the video, which is, I'm going to say, probably not more than a minute, students will write a question in the Google Docs. So you can see, it's great because you can see them interacting and writing at the same time. Everybody writes one question. All that they have to ask is one question, okay, about the expert's field or area or whatever the expert said. And then we have the expert read the questions and select 3 of them. And I say, okay, pick 3 and answer the question to your crowd. And they get very excited because they feel empowered. They are in control of the information they want to provide. And it's their work. So they're being proud of the work, and they are showing the capacity to create and to share. So that all revolves around communication, okay? And the more the students do, the less we speak, and that is a good thing. Okay. Question, comment so far?
Freddy, before continuing, there is a question. There are several comments from participants who are asking if it's possible to share your presentation of today.
Hmm. Absolutely.
I don't know if, yeah, maybe you can share your email by the end so they can send you an
Absolutely.
email. You can have it, guys. So by the end of the presentation, you can send him an email. There is also one comment slash question from Richard, and it says, one of our problems encountered in teaching English to non-native speakers is their ability to speak the language. Now, my question is it okay to teach this subject using the vernacular since they are most comfortable about it?
Okay. I'm not sure I get the question. Are you saying if you can uh, teach in your native language? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
If you get to use it to to make them feel more comfortable.
All right. Well, I'm going to say that I'm not the one that demonizes the use of the mother tongue when you're teaching English. But I would say it's important to keep it to a minimum. And the reason is, especially if you're in a country where English is not spoken, um, it's a little unfair in a way because you are limiting the student to get more input that he could probably get. But if you know specific moments in which it's going to trigger their participation, I think it's okay. I would try not to do it with the whole class because they start getting to believe that it's just the right thing to do. So I would probably address one-on-one student if I see they're having specific problems. I would just get close to the person quickly. I would clarify anything and then get back to English. So that's my advice. Keep it to a minimum, but it's not a sin. It's not something like, oh no, you're a bad teacher because you're using your native language. I don't think so. So that's fine. Keep it to a minimum for the sake of the learning of the student. Okay, good. Now I'm continuing. I kind of lost track of the time. I hope I'm not going beyond the time. Okay, now let me just quickly address. I think I took too long in the interaction part, which I think is really, really important. So I'm going to move a little faster, probably shorter with the other eyes. And I would like to look at the integration right now. So if we look at just one definition from Cambridge Dictionary Online, we're going to see that integration is the active process of combining two or more things in an effective way. And it says things. In our field, well, integrating things, I would say integrating concepts, integrating knowledge, integrating skills, very, very importantly. So in traditional teaching, what people normally do is, okay, we have a grammar class today. Or even when they want to address all skills, they say, okay, today is listening day, today is speaking day. And and usually the content that we use is somewhat disconnected from students' context and reality. So we need to look at those two things. What are we teaching our students that is meaningful to them? And second, do not try to separate the skills because that is so not natural. Okay? So the skills move back and forth and they connect in different ways. So what I'm claiming here is that next time that you're thinking, or planning your class, don't just look at, okay, I'm just going to create a bunch of activities where students can connect and interact. Good, but you cannot do just a random bunch of activities. We also need to think, okay, what's the goal of this class? At the end of this class, what do I want the students to not just do, but also know? So I need to keep in mind what context and how I'm going to scaffold the knowledge, what part I'm going to teach first, what I'm going to teach afterwards, what connections and logical sequence I'm going to have with those, and how do I get to combine the skills with that. So generally speaking, that's what I mean by integration. Now, um, look at this definition specifically regarding integration in our field. This is going to tell us That River and in the name 2010 explains that when various skills are integrated into free-flowing activities in which one provides material for the other, students learn to operate confidently with the language, easily transferring knowledge acquired in one area for active use in another. So what we're looking at in here is we have content, and content can come in different ways. Input, we can have it from audio visual, like a video. We can have it from reading. So we should be able to integrate the knowledge coming from different sources and create something to make meaning out of that. Okay, so that's generally what integration means. Free flowing activities, it means you prepare a number of activities in which the student feels comfortable moving from one to another, and everything that you provide for each activity is a little piece of the puzzle to put together for the learning of the student. Let me see. I believe I included an example for you, but let me see. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So integration, the when, the how, and the why. When can the integration happen? I'm going to say in the middle and at the end for a simple reason. You don't have enough to integrate at the beginning because it's just that, the beginning. Now, in the middle, you start to move directly into what's the content of the class, meaning linguistic content or content about anything, any discipline. Um, if you have a dossier or if you're teaching a specific field and you want to include vocabulary from that field, for example. So in the middle, and then at the end, of course, when you put everything together. So that integration should happen mostly in the middle and at the end. And if you want to select one, I'm going to see the perfect time, perfect moment is towards the end. And that's when you put everything together to make sense. How does that happen? Well, you can do it individually, and everybody is responsible for their own connections and how they put pieces together to make sense to them, on how they assimilate the content. It may vary from one person to another. But you can also have them work in groups. And it's wonderful because not only are they interacting and developing language and they are negotiating meaning, but they are also making sense of the content and they help each other. Sometimes students understand different parts of what you want to teach, and when you put them together, then they see the logical sequence of everything. You can do it in groups again. And like we mentioned before, groups of three is good. Anything beyond that, well, I guess you can do it if it's too complex or if you have very, very um, devoted students that you know for sure if you put them together, they are going to participate. But if you're not too sure about that, then probably groups of four and more may not be a good idea. Okay. Um, Now, why? Why do we need integration? One more time. Integration is what gives you the it gives you, teacher, the certainty. Well, you cannot be certain what's happening to the spray, but theoretically speaking, it would give you the certainty that student is assimilating knowledge, not just memorizing or learning to say the least, but that they incorporate that to their meaningful knowledge. So when they're integrating is when that happens. They keep the knowledge to themselves. They get to another uh, language learning hypothesis, which is probably was not very popular, that did not get that much popularity back in the 1980s. But I love it. I think it makes so much sense. It's called the noticing hypothesis. You probably heard of it. The noticing hypothesis, which claims that you may just repeat as a teacher. Students may do all the exercises that you want to, but only when students get to that point in which they notice how things are. They go like in that moment that they go like, oh, I see. When they get into that moment, the oh moment that I like to call, That's when they learn, and that's when they assimilate the knowledge. So integration, doing or providing opportunities for students to integrate, is what's going to give you um, guarantee that you're leading the student in the right direction. Okay. Here's an example. Okay. So, for example, if you select a reading on a certain topic, and then you select find a short video on the same topic, and they probably have different information. So, for example, in when I created this exercise, we were looking at a topic, and I say we because it was a group of teachers. At the concept of good citizen. What is a good citizen? So the reading would describe the qualities of a good citizen. And, oh, it's a person that participates. It's a person that is responsible. It's a person that knows the rights and the duties. And then we looked at a video, for example, that says, what happens when people are not good citizens? So they were related to the same topic, different perspective. And you ask them, okay, go to the text, get the main aspect, the main points. Go to a video, get the main points. And then we normally wrap it up with one question, which is the one that's going to help us develop critical thinking. And that is, what is it to you? The information that you have, how does that connect to you? And we can just put it straight in a question, just like this. For example, what is the importance for you as a future teacher to be a good citizen if the student's going to be a citizen, a teacher? Or if the student is in high school, I don't know. I would say, why is it important for you to be a good citizen here at school or at home? So they should adapt that knowledge and get it and combine it, and maybe say, okay, I need to be a good citizen because this is the impact that it has. And if I don't, this is the problems I'm going to have at home. So drawing from both sources to answer one question. Okay. Now I'm going to stop and see if you have any question. I'm not looking at the chat, so I'm going to look at it now. Huh. Okay, so I don't see questions. Just a lot of comments. Great.
No.
Yeah. So can I continue? I mean, no, I did not skip a question,
Yes,
did I?
yes. Let's continue. Maybe have the final questions by the end, Freddy, so
Exactly.
we can optimize the remaining minutes. Let's have all the questions at the end.
Awesome. So let's move then to it should be inspiration. I'm sorry, I did not change the word inspiration, and that will be from the Cambridge Dictionary. I would say someone or something that gives you ideas for doing something. So according to that concept, then teachers are the ones that inspire. And if we look at the second definition in that same dictionary, it says an inspiration is also a sudden good idea, and that happens in students. So what we're looking at in here is that it seems that inspiration, it's a two-side coin, or it's got two ends. I got my role as a teacher to inspire, and a student is going to have a role whether allowing the inspiration or not. I had a quick question, but I'm going to skip it because we don't have much time. But I have this quick test for you, and I was just, don't answer it, but think about it for just a few seconds. How inspiring are you for your students? I mean, do you think you're an inspiring teacher, or you think you need to work a little more on that? And inspiring includes a number of things, even doing things that you would not think you would do to inspire students. Okay, so if we look at inspiration, there are two very solid, good reasons to work about inspiration. Because some people just might misunderstand the inspiration part. Some people would just say, well, I'm not being paid to just joke around with students or do anything different. I'm being paid to teach. I'm the teacher. You're the student. I have my role. You have your role. But if we focus our attention on the student and we go beyond our own pride sometimes, we're going to see that there are two good reasons to inspire. Number one is participation. If you inspire your students, they are going to participate. They're going to start to learn. They're going to start interacting. And they're going to be there. They're not going to feel forced. Okay? And because you know that one thing that is definitely going to keep students from learning is that they feel forced to learn. You cannot make them learn if they feel forced. That's one good reason. Inspire so that they want to participate. And the second one is very important. When you inspire them, you just activate the autonomy, which is the key to learning. I think I would dare say that we all know that students learn more outside the classroom in their own time doing other things that they do learn with us in our class. So if we can make students understand that they are responsible for their learning with our support if they want to and they need it, if they're responsible and they know what their capabilities are and what their resources are, if we tap on that, the autonomy, then we're doing a great job. And you're not going to get to the autonomy just by telling students you have to be autonomous. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. But when you make students realize the importance of learning and why he's learning and why he wants to learn and what he's going to do with that, and actually what he see what you can do with English, then you're inspiring them and they will just follow along. Okay. Now, um, a little bit of reading about inspiration took me to Johnson 2018. He mentions multiple ways to inspire or to motivate students. And for example, he mentions give students options to show what they know. And like I said earlier in this presentation, I was telling you students are looking for recognition. They have a desperate need to be recognized when they know something they really want to show. And we have to be aware of that so that we provide opportunities for them to do that. Otherwise, I don't know if it happens to you, but as a student, I was a little bit of a nerd. And then when I knew something that reminds me of, if you're into Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, where she was just raising the hand all the time, wanting to talk, and she was not allowed. And I experienced that too. It's very frustrating. And some students feel that way, especially when they don't have much knowledge to share, but they have some bits of knowledge and they want to share and they don't get the opportunity. So that's so sad. Now, Johnson also mentioned that it's important. One way to um, motivate students is by using the rule of three, and that means not the three eyes. That's mine. That's my own three rule. But in this case, he mentions the preparation, practice, and application, and it's in the application part where you give students the opportunity to shine. Okay. And finally, go public with learning. So this author was discussing, well, when you do math or biology or something, and they do some science fairs and stuff, but we don't do anything about language. What about creating opportunities for students to display their knowledge? I don't know, just from the top of my head, create some musical festivals or create some slam poetry or any public event that will bring other students and parents, and they will be proud because they're showing something they know and they're preparing and working for it. Okay. Now, um, as a summary regarding the inspiration, what we have in here is that students seek recognition, like I mentioned. So it's your job, is my job, is everybody's job to provide opportunities for them to be creative and let them use their creation, not just think or do something and then they keep it to themselves. Ask them to share. So for example, in one of my classes, one of the things that we do as a teaching team, is that we have them, for example, create infographics. We discuss a certain topic and tell them, okay, from the video, from the reading, from your own experience, in your own research, go to a website, I don't know, for example, canva.com or Infogram, or any other website that you can find. Use it, create an infographic, and then next class, we're going to start our class by you showing your infographic and tell us what you did. So students usually get inspired by that. So they try to do something really nice and show what they can do. And some do pretty good work. You'd be surprised. Again, you might say, well, these activities are too advanced for me, for my students. Well, two things I want to say to that. Number one is remember that every activity can be adapted. And number two, don't assume your students' knowledge, especially about technology. They were born in technology, so they probably know quite a bit what to do, sometimes better than us. Okay. This is another activity that we did up for inspiration and let them show what they have. And that is design a game. So we give them instructions. I say, okay, create 5 questions, uh, go to online, find a way. There are plenty of templates to do board game. Create a board game with your questions and create some instructions for that. Sorry, and they did, and they brought it to class and said, okay, next time, now this is what we're going to do. Let's start playing your games. And they had so much fun. You just divide them in groups, in breakout rooms, for example, now that we are doing it online. And they play the games and you can monitor when they're playing. We go one by one and they have so much fun. So this is another activity that inspires them to work, to create, to show. Okay. And of course, when you're doing that, you're also creating a good ambience, a good environment in the class with the students. What about, like I said, one last thing, and I'm almost to the end. What about teacher traits to inspire students? Because I've been talking about what students have to do, what students need to do, what is good for them. What about teachers, teacher traits? Well, I just want to give you a piece of advice. Be ready to get out of the box, do things that you don't normally do. Okay? It works. It works sometimes that you do something different to inspire students. I'm going to give you an anecdote, and I think I'm going to tell you an anecdote that happened to me just this past week. Students usually see me like you see me right now. Okay, this is the image that you see me. Last week, I was teaching one lesson on the use of drama. Oh, by the way, part of my students are future English teachers. Okay, so they are pre-service teachers. And we were discussing one aspect on the use of drama in English language teaching. So I just started my class explaining what we were going to do today, did not open my camera, and this is what they normally see, what you're seeing right here. So I did just a little something, just a little different, and I did this. Okay. And okay, I got all kind of reactions. They were really surprised. They were laughing. They were doing other things. And just starting from that image, all their mood changed, and I started to do things and started to ask them to do things that they would not normally do. I don't know, imitate voices, making faces. And I thought I was a little concerned if it was going to work or not, because these are first year students. They started the studies during the pandemic, so we have never seen each other in a classroom, just the computer. So they don't really know us in the flesh. So, but then the activity was quite a shock. I thought if I do it, they will do it too. And I got all kind of great reactions. So be prepared to do anything. You should even be prepared to do things if it comes to that. You might say, well, are you saying that I should become a clown for my students? Not really. But if it comes to that, I also have this one in here just in case. You never know when you're going to need it, so you better have it. Okay. So I think according to my watch, when I started talking, and now I have 59 seconds. So I'm going to say thank you for your participation. I have a final few words to say. Summarizing, number one is don't forget, inspire, because you never know how far you are reaching with your inspiration. integrate so that your students know that they are transforming information and it's getting in the brain and their skills are getting better. And more importantly, well, not more importantly, but really important too, is to interact. So you give students the opportunity to believe in themselves and to negotiate meaning. Okay. Thank you for your attention. And that's what I have for you today. Thanks.